The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of black ice, the headlights cutting through thick, swirling snow. Trees loomed on either side, skeletal and silent, their branches clawing at the night sky. I could hear nothing but the engine's low hum and the tire's faint crunch against frozen asphalt. Then, a sound that didn't belong, a soft, deliberate tapping against the passenger window. I froze. Did you hear that?" I whispered, barely audible over the wind. No answer, just the hollow echo of my own voice. Another tap. Closer this time. My heart thudded. I swerved slightly, half expecting to see a wandering deer or some lost traveler, but the road was empty. Nothing. And then I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the tree lane, silhouetted in the snow. No face, no movement, just watching. The kind of watching that makes your stomach knot and your blood run cold. I blinked, and it was gone. But the feeling remained, heavy, like the air itself had turned malicious. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering, but the car didn't respond the way it should. The engine sputtered, then died, leaving us in near-total darkness. Headlights flickered once, twice, and in that instant, I could swear I saw dozens of tiny eyes glinting from the woods, moving in perfect, silent unison. My hand shook as I reached for the door. Then came the scream, high-pitched, agonizing, distant yet impossibly close, cutting through the night like a knife. I didn't know whose it was, or what had made it. And just like that, we weren't alone anymore. The snow hadn't let up since we left the outskirts of town, and the kind of quiet that settles in remote places had wrapped itself around us like a shroud. Even inside the car, with the heater blasting and the radio murmuring static between Christmas songs, the silence outside was oppressive, thick enough to make every creak of the tires against the frozen asphalt echo in my chest. I glanced at Mark in the driver's seat. He was staring ahead, jaw tight, eyes reflecting the weak glow of the dashboard. For the first time, I realized how pale he'd gone since we left the last gas station. "You okay?" I asked, my voice sounding too loud for the tiny confined space. "Yeah," he muttered, hands gripping the wheel like it was a lifeline. "Just this road. It's creepy." Creepy didn't begin to cover it. The trees pressed in on both sides, skeletal fingers scratching against the windshield whenever the wind shifted. Some of the cabins we passed were abandoned, half buried in snow, with windows boarded up and wreaths frozen stiff on the doors. Others seemed wrong. Lights flickering inside with no power running. Shadows moving behind curtains that didn't sway in the wind. I shivered, pulling my coat tighter. The car felt suddenly smaller, claustrophobic, as though the walls of snow outside were closing in. A loose piece of tinsel from last year's Christmas decorations lay on the passenger seat. I didn't remember bringing it. Mark hadn't either. It twitched, like a leaf in the breeze. "Probably just static," I said, forcing a laugh I didn't feel. Then the car radio changed. Not just the static crackle that came between stations, but a voice. A child's voice. Soft, trembling, whispering, "Don't leave me." I slammed my hand against the dial, but the voice only repeated itself. Mark froze, eyes wide, teeth clenched. "What the hell?" he started, but the words caught in his throat. The temperature in the car seemed to drop. Frost formed along the edges of the windshield, spreading fast, creeping toward us like icy fingers. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Not from a church, not from a store, but somewhere out there in the dark woods. One of those high, metallic tings that carries unnaturally far in the still air. I tried to tell myself it was just a deer trap or someone messing around, but the sound had a rhythm, deliberate, almost waiting. We drove on. The GPS had been acting strange for miles, flickering in and out of signal. And now it had gone completely blank. In its place, a single road sign emerged from the white haze, "Welcome to Hollow's End." The paint was old, peeling, but the letters seemed freshly carved. My stomach turned. "Hollow's End?" I whispered. "I don't think that's real." Mark didn't answer. He didn't even blink. There was only the road ahead, disappearing into fog and shadow, and the figure we'd seen earlier, or thought we'd seen, slipping through the trees like smoke. A sudden knock at the roof made me yelp. I ducked instinctively. Mark muttered, "It's nothing." but I knew it wasn't. It wasn't nothing. Snow clung to the car windows in thick sheets, but under the wiper blade, something had left a mark. A handprint, small, pressed into the glass from the outside. Not smudged, perfectly formed. And then it was gone. I swallowed hard. My breath came out in shaky clouds, freezing on the inside of the windshield. I wanted to laugh it off. Wanted to convince myself it was frost, a trick of the light. But every instinct in my body screamed at me. We were not alone. The road twisted unexpectedly, the tires crunching over uneven snow that didn't match the GPS or any map I'd ever seen. We passed another cabin, lights inside pulsing, almost breathing. And for a moment, I could swear the front door opened on its own, slowly, deliberately, as though welcoming, or waiting for us. Maybe we should turn back, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mark didn't answer. He just drove on, jaw tight, shoulders tense. The wind picked up, howling between the trees, carrying with it something I couldn't name. A faint, choking smell of smoke, or was it decay? I didn't want to know. Then, out of the corner of my eye, movement. A shadow flickered across the side of the car. I jerked my head, heart hammering, but nothing was there. Nothing but the snow. Nothing but the trees. Nothing but the feeling of eyes on us from everywhere at once. And I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach twist, that we were being watched. Not just observed, not just noticed, but hunted. The night stretched on. The snow fell harder, the shadows lengthened, and Hollow's End waited silently for us to arrive. The first night in Hollow's End was worse than I could have imagined. After what felt like an eternity driving along twisting snow-laden roads, the GPS still refusing to respond, we finally found a place to stop, a small, decrepit roadside inn, the kind that looked like it hadn't seen visitors since the early 70s. Its sign swayed in the wind. Hollow's End Lodge, letters rusted and half-fallen, snow piling against the edges like it was trying to swallow the whole thing. Mark parked cautiously, and I couldn't help noticing the eerie silence. No wind whistled through the broken eaves. No distant engine or animal cried. Even the snow had stopped falling. The air was thick as though it had weight. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit by a flickering overhead bulb. A dusty Christmas wreath hung crookedly over the reception desk. I expected a friendly innkeeper to greet us. Instead, a single figure emerged from the shadows, a man so old he seemed like he belonged to the building itself. His skin was pale, stretched tight over sharp cheekbones, eyes gray and glassy. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, voice like the cracking of dry branches. We need a room for the night," Mark said, trying to sound normal. The man shook his head slowly. "No one comes here by choice. Not anymore. Not since it began." He leaned closer, whispering so we could barely hear. "They'll know you're here by morning." I felt the color drain from my face. Who will?" I asked. He didn't answer. Only a slow, deliberate shake of the head. Then he turned and disappeared into the back hallway, leaving a lingering cold where he had stood. We took a room upstairs. The floorboards groaned beneath our weight, the wallpaper peeling, faint stains on the ceiling shaped like shadows reaching down. I unpacked silently, trying to ignore the cold draft creeping along the edges of the window. Mark paced near the door, muttering about checking the car, about how we should have never taken this road. I sat on the bed, staring at the frosted window. And then I noticed it, a single, small handprint pressed into the condensation. Not mine. Not Mark's. I froze. "You seeing this?" I whispered. Mark didn't answer immediately. He just stared. Then, slowly, he said, It's nothing. Probably frost." But the imprint didn't fade. And as I looked closer, I realized the fingers weren't human. Too long. Too thin. The palm almost triangular. The tips sharp like claws. That night, the events began to layer in ways I couldn't explain. At first, small things. Objects subtly shifted, even when Mark and I were awake. A coffee mug that had been on the nightstand appeared on the floor. The map I'd left open on the bed folded neatly into a corner, as though someone had handled it while we slept. Voices came next. Low murmurs, almost indistinct, like a crowd whispering in the woods. I swore I could hear them even when the door was closed, the window shut tight. One whispered my name. Another repeated, "Don't leave, don't leave." Mark tried to laugh it off. "You're hearing things," he said. But the panic in his own voice betrayed him. By the second morning, paranoia had set in. Even the breakfast room felt wrong. The long tables, covered in thick dust, were arranged in odd patterns, almost like they were marking something on the floor. The remnants of past guests, crocks of burned food, cracked mugs, seemed to move subtly when we weren't looking. And the innkeeper never appeared again, though I could swear I saw him peering from a cracked doorframe at the end of the hall. That afternoon, we ventured outside, trying to find the road back. The forest pressed close, branches scraping against the car like nails on metal. The snow crunched underfoot, and every step echoed with unnatural clarity. Something moved in the trees, but whenever I pointed, it vanished. A figure in white, flickering like a broken light. Small footprints appeared alongside ours, never crossing, never leading anywhere, just parallel. I started asking locals, or what counted as locals in this forsaken place, about the history of Hollow's End. The gas station attendant, a wiry man with cigarette-burned hands, told me the story. "It started 50 years ago," he said, voice low and trembling. "A family went missing one Christmas. Whole lot of 'em. People say it was a curse. Something about greed, betrayal, and anger that stuck to this place. Folks that wander through, some make it out, some don't. And those that do, they come back changed." I asked him why we hadn't seen anyone else on the road. His lips tightened. "Because it's not just empty roads. It's a hungry. It's waiting." By the third day, our senses were fraying. Every shadow seemed alive. The snow, once beautiful and serene, looked like ash under the weak winter sun. The headlights of the car flickered as if signaling some unseen presence. A bell rang somewhere in the distance, hollow and metallic, a sound that I felt in my chest more than my ears. Objects began moving more aggressively. The suitcase in the back seat toppled over by itself. The maps scattered on the floor, leaving trails across the carpet like someone, or something, had inspected them. At night, the whispers grew. Sometimes Mark and I would wake at the same time, paralyzed with fear, staring at each other. "It's behind us," he would whisper, and I would nod, frozen, too afraid to look. Flashbacks began to haunt me. Bits of newspaper clippings, stories told on late-night podcasts, and even local legends I had dismissed as folklore started making sense. Travelers disappearing on snowbound roads, faint cries reported from abandoned homes, notes scratched into trees near Hollow's End warning, "Never come here." One evening, as snow fell thick and heavy, we saw something that changed everything. The road ahead, familiar moments ago, twisted unnaturally, forming impossible angles. Trees lined the lane in ways that defied geometry. And then a figure appeared in the middle of the road. A woman, young, pale, dressed in a tattered white coat. She raised one hand. Not a wave. A warning. Mark slammed on the brakes. The figure didn't move as we approached. And then, the snow around her erupted in shadowy shapes, figures that seemed to crawl toward the edges of our vision. Mark yelled. I screamed. The headlights flickered, and when they stabilized, the woman and the shapes were gone. But the imprint remained on the windshield. Long fingers, triangular palm, just like the one in the inn. The more time we spent in Hollow's End, the more I questioned our own senses. I couldn't trust the snow. I couldn't trust the road. I couldn't trust the trees, or even the headlights of our car. Every reflection in the windows seemed wrong. Sometimes I thought I saw myself, or someone like me, standing just behind me in the passenger seat. Mark started whispering to himself at night, fragments of sentences about voices, figures, and things following us. I tried to reach him, to remind him of reality, but he would flinch, his eyes darting to corners where nothing existed. Even I began writing notes to myself to remember what was real. By the fourth day, Hollow's End had become a living entity. Every turn, every shadow, every sound seemed coordinated, deliberate. And yet, we pressed on, driven by fear, by stubbornness, by the impossible compulsion to find our way out. It was then we found the cabin at the heart of Hollow's End. Not on any map. Not visible until we were almost upon it. The windows were dark, but something inside moved. Shape shifting, shadows breathing. And on the front door, scratched deep into the wood, a single line of text. The road never ends. We froze. And at that moment, I realized, whatever haunted Hollow's End didn't just wait for us. It had already begun following. The cabin at the heart of Hollow's End was alive. That's the only word I could think of as we approached it, alive. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of burnt wood and something else I couldn't place. Decay, copper, and cold steel. My boots sank slightly in the snow, though it hadn't been more than a few inches deep before. The snow around the cabin looked disturbed, as if something, or someone, had dragged its fingers through it, marking a path toward the door. Mark didn't speak. He never did any more. His eyes darted between the trees and the darkened windows, scanning for movement, for danger, for anything we could understand. But Hollow's End offered no logic, no reprieve. Only inevitability. I pushed the door open. The hinges creaked like dry bones, and the scent hit us full force. Rotting pine, mold, and the unmistakable copper tang of blood. A single candle burned on a table in the center of the room. Its flame flickered against walls covered in scratches, claw marks, and words carved deep into the wood. You cannot leave. The road is ours. They always come back. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it. It's empty, I whispered, but my voice sounded hollow, weak even to me. Empty. Mark muttered, teeth clenched. There's something here. I can feel it. I turned toward the far corner of the cabin. Shadows moved. Not the shadows cast by the candle. Something else. A figure. Tall, impossibly thin, pale. No face. Or maybe too many faces, twisting and screaming beneath some wet, translucent skin. It shifted closer, silently, as if it had been waiting for us all along. Mark stepped back. I don't. The thing spoke. Not with words, not with a voice I could place, but directly inside my skull. You cannot leave. Never leave. Stay. My head throbbed. My vision blurred, candlelight flickering and warping into shapes I couldn't define. The floor beneath us seemed to stretch, elongate, twist. Time became fluid. One moment, we were in the cabin. The next, the trees outside were inside, snow swirling around our ankles. Mark screamed. The sound ricocheted off the walls, echoing in impossible directions. Run! Run! I tried to grab him, but he wasn't there, or maybe he was there too many times. Reflections of him appeared in every window, every corner. One smiled at me. Another screamed. One held a knife, but Mark never had a knife. The candle extinguished. Darkness swallowed us. And then came the whispers. So many, layered and overlapping, words I could almost understand. We've been waiting. You belong to us. The road is ours forever. A hand, impossibly long and skeletal, reached from the wall. Another from the floor. Shadows became solid, crawling over us, pulling at our clothes, at our hair, at our very flesh. Mark shouted my name. I called his, but our voices were trapped in the black, bouncing off walls that no longer existed in any logic I understood. I saw the woman in white again. She didn't move. Her eyes were hollow pits, yet I felt her watching, judging, guiding. Don't fight, she whispered, voice like wind through dry trees. It only wants you to see. And then the room shifted again. The walls melted into snow-laden trees. The ceiling disappeared. The road, the cursed road, stretched endlessly before us. Every turn, every mile, led us back to the cabin. It was a loop, a trap. No matter how fast we ran, how far we drove, how desperately we screamed. Hollow's End was infinite, self-contained, alive. Mark fell to his knees. I can't, it's... The shadows moved faster. They became the snow, the trees, the very air. They whispered in Mark's ear. Give yourself. Stay. I reached for him, grabbed his arm, but my hand passed through him like smoke. He looked at me with eyes that were no longer his, filled with fear and something else. Acceptance. The thing, the force, the entity. It was inside him now. And inside me. A door appeared. Not the cabin door. Not real. But I ran toward it anyway, flinging it open. Light spilled in. Warmth. Hope. Freedom. And then the snow, the shadows, the whispering hands. All of it rushed through me at once. Pain, fear, and cold filled every nerve. I screamed, a sound that wasn't just mine, but theirs too, their voices merging with mine. We were outside. The road stretched endlessly, dark and silent. But the world was wrong. The sky pulsed red, then blue, then black. Time fractured. I could see moments from the past, from other travelers, frozen in their terror. Faces pressed against windows, eyes wide, hands clawing at doors that would never open. Mark was gone. I tried to call him, to find him, but he was gone. Or maybe I wasn't seeing him. The entity had claimed him, just as it was claiming the road, the trees, the snow, me. And then, impossibly, I was back in the cabin. Candlelight flickered. The carvings on the walls glowed faintly. The road never ends. You belong to us. I collapsed, shaking, unable to move. The whispers grew louder, chanting now. Forever. 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 My reflection appeared in a window. Or maybe it wasn't me. A shadow behind me mimicked every movement I made. But delayed, twisted, monstrous. My own face grinned at me, lips curling unnaturally. I turned away, but the reflection followed, screaming silently. I tried to run again. The cabin stretched, elongated, twisted like taffy. Doors appeared and vanished. Windows opened onto endless snow or burning forests or infinite darkness. There was no way out. There was only Hollow's End. The woman in white appeared again. Her hand reached for mine. "See it," she whispered. "Understand it. There's no escaping." The snow outside formed shapes. Passengers we had never met, travelers long dead, faces pressed into ice, screaming silently. They were part of the road, part of the entity. Part of us now. Mark appeared, or a version of him. His eyes were empty, his mouth moving without sound. He raised a hand as though to warn me. And I knew, with a sick final clarity, no one leaves Hollow's End. Not really. Not completely. The road stretches, the snow falls, the trees wait. And the shadows are patient. I screamed. And then silence. When I woke, the snow had stopped falling. The world outside the cabin, or what I thought was outside, was eerily still. The trees loomed in silence, skeletal and patient, as though holding their breath. I blinked, trying to shake off the remnants of the feverish visions that had overtaken me in Hollow's End. My body ached in ways I couldn't describe. Cold, fatigue, and something heavier, as though a weight pressed down on my chest that had nothing to do with snow or ice. Mark was gone. Not in the way a person can vanish. Gone as though he had never existed, erased from the cabin, from the road, from memory itself. I searched frantically, calling his name, my voice breaking against the cold stillness. The snow outside crunched beneath unseen footsteps that moved with deliberate rhythm. I turned, and there was no one, only the faint outlines of footprints that led nowhere. The cabin was empty. The candle had burned down to a stub. The carvings on the wall glowed faintly, their message unmistakable. The road never ends. You belong to us. I wanted to leave. I tried. But the road outside was no longer a road. It was a white void, stretching in every direction, with shapes moving at the periphery of my vision. Shadows that were not shadows. Trees that bent unnaturally, twisting in impossible angles. And always, always the whispering. Stay. Belong. Forever. Hours, days passed. I lost track of time. Every attempt to leave was futile. Doors opened onto more snow. Windows reflected faces that were not mine, twisted with fear and pain. Sometimes I would look down at my hands and see them aged, skeletal, or layered with another set of fingers that were not my own. My reflection in the glass stared back at me with hollow eyes, grinning in a way that made my stomach turn. I tried to sleep. I think I did for brief moments, but dreams were no longer my own. I was shown the road over and over, travelers before me trapped in loops of horror. Faces pressed against windows, hands clawing at doors, screams frozen in the snow. Sometimes a voice, Mark's voice, whispered, "It's okay. You're safe here, forever." I left notes, scribbled on scraps of paper and the walls, hoping someone, anyone, would know what had happened. But the writing shifted overnight. Words I wrote yesterday were erased or altered into messages I couldn't have imagined. No one leaves Hollow's End. You are ours. Food and water appeared sporadically. Sometimes a pot of stew, steaming on the stove, smelling faintly of spices I had never tasted before. Sometimes, nothing. Yet, even when I ate, the feeling of hunger never left. It was as if Hollow's End consumed not just flesh, but hope itself. I stopped trying to rationalize. Logic and reason were useless here. Even the snow, so beautiful once, now seemed alive, watching me, waiting, pressing against the windows with invisible fingers. The whispers grew louder, forming words I could almost understand. Remember, remember, remember. I remembered. I remembered the road, the cabin, the woman in white, the shadows, Mark. And I remembered the way they claimed him. I began to move differently, cautiously, as if the air itself could betray me. Every step I took echoed unnaturally. The floor beneath me sometimes turned into snow, sometimes into cracked ice, sometimes into nothing at all. I learned quickly to move silently, to observe, to understand that Hollow's End had a rhythm, a pattern, a consciousness. It watched, waited, tested. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I saw a road. A thin black line stretching toward the horizon. Hope flared briefly, warm and dangerous. I ran toward it. The snow beneath me gave way, turning into deep black voids. The road twisted, doubled back, and no matter how fast I ran, I ended up in the same place. The cabin. The door opened on its own, welcoming me back. Inside, the walls pulsed faintly, breathing. Shadows moved along the corners. I felt them reach for me. The whispers became chanting. Forever, forever, forever. I screamed. My own voice echoed in endless layers, overlapping with voices from decades past. Travelers trapped in the same loop. Some screaming, some silent, all consumed. Time fractured. I was everywhere and nowhere at once. Moments from the past, glimpses of future travelers, and memories I didn't have, all collided in my mind. The candle flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed me, yet I felt more seen than ever before. Hollow's End knew me, claimed me, and I knew with certainty that chilled me to my core. I could never leave. Then silence. Absolute, unnatural silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums, your chest, your mind. I opened my eyes. The cabin was empty. The snow outside was still. The air smelled faintly of pine, sweet and familiar. For a heartbeat I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. I stepped outside. The road stretched endlessly before me, white and perfect under the pale moonlight. Not a shadow, not a whisper, not a sign of Mark. A wind stirred the trees, faint, almost like a sigh. I felt lighter. Hope returned briefly. Then I noticed it, a single handprint in the snow. Small, elongated fingers, triangular palm. Not mine. Not Mark's. Pressed as though waiting. Watching. And from the forest beyond, a soft whisper carried on the wind, almost melodic, almost human. The road never ends. I stumbled back, heart hammering, freezing in place. The snow beneath my boots shifted as if it had a mind of its own. Shapes formed at the edges of my vision. Shadows of travelers passed, frozen mid-scream, frozen mid-step, frozen mid-life. Their eyes turned toward me. Hollow, empty, accusing. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up, anywhere but here. But every instinct told me the same thing. It was too late. I had arrived. And I belonged. The woman in white appeared again, standing at the edge of the road. Her hand reached toward me. Not a warning. Not a salvation. Just acknowledgement. See it, she whispered. Accept it. I did. The candle flickered once inside the cabin. The snow shifted outside. And the road waited. Always waiting. Patient. Hungry. Eternal. I am here now. Always. The wind carries faint echoes of laughter. Or was it crying? Every Christmas, travelers come, following the same roads we took. They see the trees, the cabins, the snow. They hear the whispers, the chanting, the bell. And when they try to leave, the road twists. The shadows reach. And Hollows End remembers. I watch. I wait. And the road never ends.